There's a lot that we don't talk about, sometimes due to embarrassment, fear, insecurities. We neglect discussions about the most common parts of our lives, things we all deal with, sometimes every day. But on the Caffeinated Gypsy podcast, together, we'll break all of those taboos and talk open and honest about shared experiences. Knowledgeable people relating things you felt but never put into words. Parenting, sex, fitness, energy, anything to connect you to your authentic self, unfiltered. Now, the Caffeinated Gypsy herself, a free spirit, world traveler with a passion for fitness and exploring topics that others might avoid. Hello and welcome to the Caffeinated Gypsy podcast. I'm Stephanie Cotton, your host. Thank you all so much for being with me today. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the full moon in Pisces that is happening this week. So I'm going to give you guys all the details and tell you how we can work with this and get the most benefit out of that. Updates. I'm trying to think if there's anything new since the last podcast. Still doing coffee. And oh yes, I'm going to be doing a full moon coffee blend. So this is going to be this full moon specifically. We're going to be working with that Pisces energy, and we're also going to be working with the Pluto aspect of this full moon, which we'll talk about today. So the intention for this particular coffee is going to be to use the benefits of Pluto and the full moon to charge that coffee to help with releasing. So if you are working through releasing stuff, this would be a really good blend to get. It's limited. It's only going to be, I'm going to take orders starting today through Friday, and then that'll be it, because you're not going to get that energy back again. So, and I don't like coffee to sit, so I try to do it to order as much as I can. So if you're interested in getting that will be on the website. And so what I'm going to do is take the house blend and I'm going to add some extra crystals, and we're going to put it under the full moon to infuse it with all that energy from the full moon. So if you feel like you need a little bit of extra help over the next few weeks, or you just want to get down with some full moon charged coffee, feel free to go over to my website and snag that. And that's at caffeinatedgypsy.com. And so if you have not noticed or you have not heard the podcast in the past, everything's been transferred over to caffeinatedgypsy.com. My old website address is no longer active. Everything was integrated, so most people probably can't even tell. If you're just clicking on my links, everything should be pretty much updated. But I just want to make sure everybody knew that. And what else is going on? Busy time right now. We're getting ready to go into getting closer to Samhain or Halloween, All Hallows Eve. So you're going to probably hear me talking a lot about just the energy. There's a huge shift of energy over the next month where, if you've ever heard people talk about, the portal starts to open. So energy from our ancestors and things like that tends to be a little bit more heightened. So I'm going to start talking about that, giving you guys some tips on how you can connect with that energy, or things you can do if you don't want to connect with that energy. So that's going to be interesting. As an empath and as somebody who is able to connect with spirit guides and things like that, this is always a really busy time for me, because not only am I getting a ton of information, my sleep's disrupted, but also people want to get services because they're like, what the fuck is happening? So really good time though if you want to get like past life work done. With the portal opening next month, the energy is going to be really, really heightened. So if you're trying to tap into your past lives, or even working with like your spirit guides or getting information from your ancestors, this is a really good time to start thinking about doing some past life work. So if you're interested in doing that, feel free to reach out to me. You can always go on my website. I have everything on there as well. So It's always interesting, especially if you're new to this. So if you're new to this whole world, which I know a lot of my listeners are, if you just start noticing your intuition is heightened, or you start noticing even just spirits or things that you're like, oh, did I just see that? Lots of deja vu, lots of getting woke up in the middle of the night. Or if you have kids and they have that happening, that's why the portal opens and there's just a lot more spirit activity. So, yeah, I always like to kind of throw that out there so people aren't like, oh, am I crazy? Because you're not crazy. It's really happening. What else is going on? Oh, my goodness. Saturn goes direct next week. So I talked about this on my stories a lot this week. You're probably feeling that. We've been going through Saturn retrograde since, I don't have the exact date in front of me. I want to say it was like April or May. And it's been a lot of us kind of taking a step back and going, okay, where are my boundaries? What karmic things do I need to work through? Have I been healing? Ancestral stuff comes up. Karma is the police. It is rules. It's karma. It's restriction. So we've been feeling this sort of like nudge to really like work through our stuff, combined with Pluto retrograde. So as this is sort of wrapping up and we're getting ready to go direct, sometimes right before we feel this like even stronger because we're like, oh shit, like I need to get this done. And then with some of the other planetary aspects right now, it's really amplifying that. So if you're kind of feeling that, that's why. If you're feeling like you're stuck, a lot of times this is because of past life stuff and energetic patterns that we've been carrying over ancestral. I was actually having this conversation with my husband the other night because my son has this project in school that was like on our cultural heritage. So we started pulling up all of our ancestral stuff, like we're doing our family tree together. And it was interesting because I was looking at like my paternal grandmother, and I realized it was like, oh, like her mom had been alive until like the late 90s. And I was like, that's really weird. Like I never met her. I never knew anything about her. And so we just started talking about like how, it's funny when you look back on like your family tree and you start to see like the patterns that carry over. And my husband was like, what's really funny is I had a grandmother on my dad's side as well who I never knew her mom, and we lived right in the same town. And so, it's really interesting to me when you start to look back on how generational things kind of carry over. And, like both of our parents, our dads are absent in our life, and their moms had, moms that weren't in their life. So it's always kind of fascinating to me. So I was like, man, can you imagine if like everybody was looking at like going back ancestrally alone and looking at these patterns? Because then, once you start to see those things, you can start to heal from those things. Because what happens is we get these energetic patterns that are carried over, and then we start having issues with abandonment and loss and rejection and, a whole slew of things. And then if you combine that with like the past life stuff, oh my goodness, we've got all these layers of things. So I think it's really fascinating when we start kind of peeling those things back, because sometimes we're carrying stuff with us and we don't even know like where it came from or why we have it. We have certain insecurities. So I think whenever Saturn went retrograde, that pulled a lot of stuff up for people, and people started going, oh, okay, like why do I have this feeling? Like what is going on? So as we're kind of coming to, the end of that, I think we're really feeling that even more. And so one of the things I always recommend to people is if you haven't done it yet, maybe even just start cataloging like ancestrally, like what has happened, not to even like pull that up with your family, but just so you can start identifying. Because sometimes if you start identifying, it makes it easier to go, oh yeah, like this is long, like this has been happening for generations. It also helps identify patterns that you could have in your past life, because a lot of times our past life mimic our ancestral history because we have this energetic vibration, and we just go back into that similar energetic vibration because that's what our soul's comfortable with, until we repair this karma that we have. And that's what Saturn is all about, is repairing this karma. So, yeah, it's been interesting. So let's talk about the full moon. This is going to be an emotional moon. It just is. There's a lot of stuff happening I mean, I know we've always got a lot of stuff happening, and I feel like I say that all the time, but this one it's kind of a funky moon. So what we have is a full moon in Pisces, right? So Pisces is ruled by Neptune. Pisces is that watery energy. Pisces is what rules secrets. It rules our subconscious. It's also self-renewal. It also is like that behind the scenes, like things that we're not really aware of. The other thing with Pisces is, with it being ruled by Neptune, it's very dreamlike. It's not necessarily clear. If you've ever dealt with a Pisces, sometimes it's really hard to just get like a clear answer out of them, because they're very much ruled by Neptune, and it's very much kind of like dreamy. And a lot of times they kind of live in that dream state, and it's really hard for them to pull themselves into reality. And so with the full moon, we're looking at amplified energy. And our full moon is what rules our emotions, is what rules our intimate relationships. So if you take that and you put that with Pisces, we're looking at a very emotional moon. We also have a lot of aspects going on with this moon that are going to make this feel a little bit bipolar. So I'm just going to break down the aspects. It's going to sound like a lot, so I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible for you guys, because I don't like all the jargon, and I try to just make it really, really simple. What we're going to be needing to do with this is basically a full moon of renewal, rebirth. And we're going to talk about how Pluto is going to play into this in just a minute. And so the way I think we should really approach this moon is identifying what's coming up. Take things with a grain of salt. So what's happening with this full moon is we have Pluto in the mix, which is all about like our intuition. So we're going to have a very strong intuition. But anytime Neptune is in the mix, you have to be very careful, because Neptune rules delusion. So you're going to be like, yes, I know this, I'm on it, but Neptune's going to come in and it's going to make you maybe see things that aren't really there. So while I'm going to give you all of this information, I want to preface this with, this is a moon where we're observing. This is a moon where we're feeling. This is a moon that we're going to write stuff down and revisit that stuff. This is not a moon that you want to take immediate action on. It's just not. Because with Neptune in the mix, we don't really know what's real and what's not. And so it's really an opportunity for us to really go very deep. This is a great time to work on those very deep things. So with Pluto and Neptune in the mix, we're going to be able to access that subconscious. Okay, we're going to be able to pull up, like I was just talking about before. This is a great time to start pulling up past life stuff, ancestral stuff. But it's also, we want to really kind of sit with this. Okay, this is not the time to be like, oh, this is what happened, and now I'm going to like burn the house down, like everybody's got to go. No. This is not that time. This is the time where we're going to pull things up and we're going to sit with it, and we're going to revisit this in like a week or two and be like, okay, like what's really, like what was real out of what I've uncovered, and what was maybe not so real, but giving me another type of message. Okay, so we have a T-square with Moon, Neptune, and it's going to be opposite Sun and Mars, square Jupiter. Whew, that was a mouthful. So let's break this down. Anytime we have Moon and Neptune, Neptune rules our emotions. Moon rules our emotions. Neptune is delusion, so it's watery. Sun and Mars are fire. Mars is action. It's anger. Jupiter is very, very passionate, right? It's the go-getter. So let's mix these things up a little bit, and let's think about this for a second. What we're going to be looking at is anger, confusion, maybe some disappointment. So Mars really gives us, Mars and Jupiter together, it's always an interesting mix, because it makes you feel, like Jupiter makes you feel confident. Jupiter is what gives you your swagger. Like Jupiter is like Beyonce, right? Like straight up swagger. You're going to be like confident. You're going to be feeling happy-go-lucky. Mars is very much like action, like let's do this now. The problem with this is when we put all of these things together, we could be feeling extra confident and like fired up. but in a very delusional way because Neptune's in the mix. So we want to be really careful because what can happen is it can lead to some embarrassing things. It can lead to us having an overinflated ego or maybe not reading all the signs correctly. And then we kind of get smacked with reality. And then with some of these other placements, it can really bring us down very, very quickly. So we really want to take this energy and we want to be like, okay, maybe let's start planning some stuff. So if there's things you're like, yes, I want to do this, now would maybe be a good time to jot these ideas down, right? But not necessarily go into action, okay? So with this full moon sextile Pluto that we're going to be working with, we're really looking at a very powerful release. Okay, so remember that full moon is when all this energy builds and then we release what's no longer working. So what we're going to be doing is pulling all of this information from below that we maybe have been working towards things. So we've had a busy summer, as I've talked about a lot, and maybe we've had things come up with our family or intimate relationships or maybe work or whatever. And maybe there's some things that we're realizing like these are not working. So Pluto is going to really help us pull some of this stuff up. And now we can write down what we want to release, right? I really want to stress with everybody, it's not a good time to break up with somebody. It's not a good time to quit your job. This is not the time to do this. But this is a good time where we can start writing these things down and we can start seeing like, okay, I'm going to release this. Okay. And then at the new moon, we can go back and go, okay, I want to set some intentions. Maybe that would be the time to set an intention. If you're still feeling like this relationship is not working, that would be the time to be like, okay, we're going to set the intention to release that. Because then we've had some time to sort of move out of this energy. We're going to move into a little bit more stable energy. We're going to move out of Neptune, and then we're going to be able to think a little bit clearer. We don't want to be ruled by our emotions with this. Okay, so be really, really careful with that. This Jupiter squared with Neptune is going to give us a test of faith. Okay, so Jupiter could be such a good energy. I was just talking about this the other day on my podcast with my Patreon members. We did a whole podcast on like how you can channel your Jupiter energy. And so Jupiter is a fun energy. Jupiter is what gives you your swagger. But it's like everything. We've got to have this balance. So when this is squared off with Neptune, which is what we have happening, we're going to be ruled by delusion. So once again, we might be like, oh yeah, I'm feeling myself. Oh, that person's feeling me. But maybe we're not seeing things clearly. Maybe we're not reading all the signs clearly. So it really opens us up for embarrassment. So you want to be really careful with some of these placements. The other thing with Jupiter is we're going to be feeling lucky. We're going to be feeling good. So we're going to want to be indulgent. We're going to want to take some risk. But we want to be really careful with Neptune in the mix because things may not be what they seem. So this is not the time to follow a new business venture. This is not the time to buy into a pyramid scheme. This is not the time to gamble. You want to be really, really careful with alcohol and drugs because we're already looking at some delusion with Neptune. Neptune and alcohol and drugs are a really bad idea because it can really just pull us into that like dreamy watery state even more. And so we're definitely predisposed to overdosing, overindulgence. So you want to be really careful. That goes for food as well. We can become overindulgent with this. We don't usually die from too much food usually, but alcohol and drugs, absolutely. So you want to be really, really careful with that. The other thing is we have Mars opposite Neptune. So Neptune is just a really big player in this full moon. And this can make us feel a little bit inadequate. So I said this is kind of like the bipolar full moon. So we have Jupiter over here like, yeah, I can do this. I'm like the shit, like feeling super confident. And then we've got Neptune over here going, but I feel so inadequate. I'm not good enough. And so we're going to kind of feel this fluctuating back and forth. And with Mars specifically, it's a very powerful energy. So this could really drive us into the depths of despair really quick, especially if we were feeling really good with that Jupiter aspect and something, maybe we didn't read the signs right or something didn't go the way we thought. And then this is where it can really pull us into like a really dark place. So we want to be really, really careful. And also with Mars, this is what rules our sex life. So you may be a little bit delusional just about like your partner or how things are in the bedroom. You may just not be quite in touch with reality with some of that stuff. And that's okay. Especially if you're in a new relationship with somebody or you're dating somebody, you may be thinking it's going to be one way and then you get into the bedroom and it's a totally another way. That's what happens with a placement like this, but it'll pass. It's okay. We also have Mars squared with Jupiter. And so we're going to be feeling a lot of initiative. And so this is why I say this moon is very bipolar. We're going to want to do a lot of stuff, but it's just not a good time to do it. So be really careful with being impulsive, jumping the gun. You want to really try to moderate your energy as much as you can. You're going to feel like I can do anything. The problem with this is it's going to burn out and then you're going to go down into a very like dark place. So if you're feeling this, this is the time to set up like longer plans. I'm really, really big about like not jumping the gun on, a lot of times on full moons, everybody's like, let's let it all go. And I'm like, but like, let's just hone in a little bit. Let's maybe write some stuff down. Let's start seeing what we can release from ourselves before we physically release from people. So this is a time to really start maybe creating a longer plan. If there's things that you want to enact in your life, whether that's career, relationship, or whatever, this is the time to really set a plan into place. This full moon is also conjunct with Neptune, so we're definitely looking at a lot of emotional sensitivity. This can also pull up a lot of our own insecurities. Confusion. You may just feel really confused, like what the fuck is happening right now? That's what Neptune's great at. And depending upon some of your other astrological placements, this could take you into just dreamland. If you already have a lot of Neptune or Pisces in your chart, you may be already predisposed to being like, you know what? I think I'm just going to lay in bed and watch Netflix, or I think I'm just going to lay in bed and daydream. So you have to be really careful that you don't fall completely down that rabbit hole. Once again, really careful with alcohol and drugs right now, you guys. I can't stress that enough. It's not a judgment. It's really just a safety thing. Whenever you're dealing with Neptune, you are already predisposed to overdosing, or it amplifies those things. So you want to be really, really careful with that. That full moon is also opposite with Mars. So this can also lead to just some moodiness, anger, selfish. So be careful. I can't even like express enough like how bipolar this moon is going to feel. So, and I don't say that to be like doom and gloom. I say that so that you're aware. And the thing about the moon is it moves super quick, right? So we have a few days where this is going to be really strong, and then we can just, we'll float on out of it. This Pluto sextile, the full moon, is really going to help us though start to tap into some of those subconscious things. So as I mentioned before, we're already starting to kind of come into this portal of our, of next month, or the portal is going to be open and we're able to tap into like spirits and all of this energy. And so it's the same thing. Like we're going to be able with this Pluto aspect to tap into that sort of underworld, right? Because Pluto rules the underworld. So this is a good time to communicate with your guides. This is a good time to do some hypnosis. This is a good time to do past life regression. This is a good time to do those things that help you reach that subconscious state of yourself and start uncovering stuff. This is about being reborn. This is about releasing. So as we're pulling stuff up, this is where I really think the full moon does its best, is where we can go, okay, like I'm really insecure about X, Y, and Z. I'm going to set the intention to release that. Or going, okay, this relationship's not working, but what am I doing that attracts me to this relationship? Like, what is it? What patterns do I have in place that keeps bringing me back to these same types of people? These are the sorts of things that Pluto's going to do. And this is the kind of thing we should be working on. So not so much going, okay, ending this, ending that, but more like, okay, let's start releasing these patterns. Let's start identifying what I am carrying with me karmically that I need to start releasing and letting go of. And then with this next new moon, if we're like, that relationship is a bad pattern that I need to release, then that's where we start setting those intentions of, okay, I'm going to let go of these relationships, then I'm going to start new relationships, or I'm going to work on myself, or whatever it is that we need to do. But I just like to really caution people. I know that there's a lot of stuff out there. It's like release, let go of what's not working for you. And I totally agree with that. But we want to be very careful when Neptune's in the mix that we're not letting go of things because we're a little bit delusional. Also, be really gentle with yourself. This moon is going to make you feel, or has a tendency to make you feel very insecure. And it's delusion, guys. Like, you're good enough, you're beautiful enough, you're strong enough. All these stories that we tell ourselves are not true. And so be really careful if you already suffer from depression. I know a lot of people have reached out to me in the last few weeks. And I know a lot of people silently suffer with this. And this is one of those moons that if you allow it, it can really pull you into that depressive state. Because depression loves delusion, right? It feels really good there. It loves to feel bad about itself. And Neptune, it's just like whatever. It'll pull you into whatever delusional direction you want to go. It's not impartial. So try to be really careful with yourself. This is definitely a time where you need to be like on point with your self-care techniques. So you need to be eating really good. You need to be moving your body in some way, shape, or form. You need to be meditating. You need to be journaling. You need to be doing some sort of physical outlet with your hands, like art, or, whatever that is for you is your outlet. This is the time you need to be doing this. You need to be talking with your guides. Or your angels, or whatever, however you do this. But this is definitely where you need to be taking that time. This is where you may need to reach out to somebody and go, hey, I need to go have a coffee date because I need to get out of the house, or I need to talk about what's coming up. So definitely, this is where you need to be taking really good care of yourself. And, understand it's the moon. It moves fast, right? So we've got like 4 or 5 days where it's really intense. And if you can kind of keep that in your mind, like, okay, this is just a phase. It's going to move on. Let me see what I can pull from this. I personally I can feel the effects of the moon already kind of coming into play. And I know this could be like a challenging moon. So I'm already doing things, right, to make sure that when I get into that energy, I'm like, okay, I know this is just going to last for a few days. And I tell myself that. Sometimes I even mark it in my little calendar book. I'm like, okay, by this date, I'm going to be good. And that really helps me not allow myself to kind of sink into deep depression. So definitely take really good care of yourselves. The coffee that I'm going to be doing for you guys is really going to be about helping you to release these patterns. So if you need that little bit of extra support, that's what that coffee is going to be doing. Also, too, I wanted to mention, if you just feel like you need or want to have that extra support, there's always room in our Patreon group. We have the most fun. It's a really small, intimate group, and this is where I post every day. It's a really good place. We all kind of check in on each other, and I don't know, I just feel like if you need extra support or you just want to be a part of a community, we would love to have you. And you can find all the stuff about joining my Patreon on my website, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there in case you're feeling kind of lost, because I know a lot of you guys are new to this and don't necessarily have communities. So that's why I have set up the Caffeinated Gypsy Tribe, so people do have a community and you guys can be around other people that have like-minded views. So full moon, it is on Friday at technically, what time is it? I wrote it down, 12:30 a.m. So actually, I think that's technically Saturday. I'm looking at my book. So it's 9:33 p.m. West Coast time, 12:33 a.m. East Coast time. So I guess it's technically Saturday morning. So whether you want to celebrate or, do things on Friday or Saturday, always remember we have a good 4 days where you can work with the moon. So if you don't get it on like the day that everybody else is doing it, don't worry. It's not that big of a deal. All right, you guys. If you need anything from me, you can find me on my website at caffeinatedgypsy.com or on Instagram at caffeinatedgypsy. And until the next one.
For all the people who judge without knowing, just throw the peace on, tell them good vibes only.